The European Union just passed the largest wealth transfer in history. At least it looks like that's what they just passed into law. And it's going to impact the United States of America. It's going to crush our economy, not just the European Union's economy. It might crush theirs as well, but it will absolutely decimate the United States of America. And not just big, gigantic companies either, not just the economy at a macro level, but you individually will be greatly impacted by this new law passed in the European Union. And is anyone talking about it? Have you heard about this from anybody else? Well, other than my good friend Glenn Beck, nobody else is talking about this issue. No one. But we're going to be talking about it here today on the Justin Haskins Show. Welcome. My name is Justin Haskins. Before we get into the details, this is going to be a really quick episode, so we want to dive right in. But before we get into the details of this crazy new law in the European Union, quick call to action. Please like this video, subscribe to the channel, hit the little notifications button on the video so that you get new notifications every single time we post a video on the Justin Haskins channel, and leave a comment. I want to hear from you. I want to know what you think about this law. I want to know what you think about this insane new policy and how it might impact your life. All these things are going to help bring this channel to more people in the future. That's how big tech algorithms work. The more people who like the videos, subscribe, leave comments, the more other people will see it. So I would greatly appreciate it if you could subscribe to the channel, like the video, leave a comment. All right, let's get into the topic. Again, as I said earlier, this is a really complicated issue, but I'm going to try to do it as quickly as possible. Got a lot of things going on right now. Just got back from a big trip in Dallas where I was on the Blaze TV with Glenn Beck and Allie Beth Stuckey and a whole bunch of other people, and talking about this issue with them. Absolutely crazy. So I got a lot of work to do, but I really wanted to record this video for you, give you a chance to digest it, share it with friends and family members because it's a huge issue. So first, I want to just talk to you a little bit about the law generally, and then I'm going to get to the part of the law that's going to be really crushing for the U.S. economy and the biggest wealth transfer in history, that part of the law. Before I get to that, though, just in general, what am I talking about? There's this law that was passed in May 2024 called the Corporate Sustainability Due Diligence Directive. I know it's a really sexy name for a law. It's called the acronym is CSDD or CSDDD if you're looking it up. The law was the culmination of years worth of work from left-wing groups in the European Union trying to get this law into place. The way it works is if you are a large company that does business in the European Union, either because you sell products in the European Union or you sell services, or you have operations there, have a lot of employees there, or you're headquartered in the European Union, you have to comply with a massive new social credit scoring ESG system that they're building in the European Union. It's going to take effect, start being rolled out in 2027. The law is already in place. It's already been fully passed. But the law itself doesn't actually start imposing penalties and imposing rules on corporations, big businesses that do business in the European Union until 2027. So we have a little bit of time to stop this. What kinds of social credit scoring things are included in this? Well, how much land are you using as a business? How much water do you consume? How committed are you to battling climate change? What's your climate transition plan? You're going to have to come up with one and report it to the European Union. There's all sorts of social justice stuff that's in here, all references to the World Health Organization. There's 89 references in this law to other laws, international agreements, and EU provisions and UN agreements and things like that. All of these things are going to be imposed on companies. Vague statements about social justice and redistribution of wealth and things of that nature are also included in the law. So lots of really radical, crazy stuff. If you're interested in learning more about the details of the law, I did a big video on this topic a few months back, I believe, if I remember right. You can find it on the Justin Haskins channel, or also put it in the show notes. You can find it on the podcast homepage as well if you're listening to the show. So it's a crazy law. The way they define a big company, by the way, in the law is $489 million worth of net worldwide turnover, or net turnover in the European Union. So if you are a large American company and you do $489 million worth of revenue, net turnover is kind of like revenue in the European Union, then you are going to have to comply with this law. If you are an EU-based company and you do $489 million worth of revenue globally, and you have a certain number of employees in the European Union, then you have to comply with this law as well. So this is a far-reaching law. I know that sounds like a lot of money, but most of the really big corporations you think of, American corporations, would fall under this law. Not all of them, but a lot of them would directly have to comply with these EU ESG rules. For example, Apple would have to comply with this law. McDonald's, Meta, which is the company, the parent company of Facebook, Alphabet, which is the parent company of Google. So Google would have to do this. Google, of course, owns Alphabet, and Google own YouTube, right? So YouTube would have to comply with this. Microsoft, all sorts of food companies and manufacturing companies and software companies. I mean, it's just tons and tons and tons of companies that would have to comply directly with this rule. That in and of itself has the potential to transform society, but because you're going to force all these big corporations to move to the left, right? And adopt these radical views on climate change and phasing out fossil fuels and forcing people to drive electric cars. All this stuff is in the law. But what's really crazy about it is not the companies that are directly being impacted by the law. The really crazy thing is that the law requires those large companies that are directly covered under the law. They're called covered companies, like Apple and Facebook and, McDonald's, etc. Those companies, as part of their requirements, have to make sure that most of the companies that they do business with up and down their supply chains, upstream and downstream in their chain of activities, most of those companies also have to comply with the rules in this ESG scheme. So in other words, let's say you are a potato farmer who sells potatoes or lettuce or beef or something to McDonald's. Even if you don't sell potatoes that are used by McDonald's in the European Union, it doesn't matter. You're just an Idaho potato farmer, you sell potatoes, or you're a beef rancher in Texas and you sell beef to McDonald's. You will have to comply with various aspects of this law, and it will be imposed on you by McDonald's. McDonald's has to do this under the European rules. If you are a transportation company and you transport McDonald's products, or you transport some other company's products, Apple or whatever, you will also have to comply. If you're a warehouse, you will also have to comply that holds these products. If you are if you make just a tiny little widget that goes inside of one of Ford's cars, just a little plastic component or something, and you manufacture that, and that manufacturer is going to have to comply with this. So when you actually start thinking about all of the companies that will be caught up in this, it's like all of them. It's like all companies in the United States will have to comply with this law directly or indirectly in some form. And by doing that, the entire global economy that has any relationship with Europe at all is going to be transformed, forced to move to the left. And that's the whole point of the law. That's what is trying to be accomplished by this. Now, you might be asking, why would these big companies, why would they impose it on these smaller companies? Why would they do that? Well, the law says they have to in order to do business in the European Union. There's a penalty if they don't. The penalty is 5%. It doesn't necessarily always going to be 5%, but the penalty could be 5% of net worldwide turnover, which is turnover. Net turnover is kind of like revenue. So 5% of annual net worldwide turnover. So for a company like Apple, I did the math, that would be a $19 billion fine. Okay. So they're going to do this. If they don't force the companies that they're doing business with through coercion and contracts and other things to go along with this EU system, they will have to pay a penalty of 5%, or in Apple's case, $19 billion. All right, this is absolutely insane. Not only that, but companies in the European Union, or individuals or activist groups, organizations, etc., can actually sue the companies in the European Union or in America if they do the requisite amount of business in the European Union for not complying. They can sue them for damages and things like that. So we're talking about one of the craziest laws you could possibly imagine. Now, as bad as all of that is, because that just in and of itself, everything I've told you so far, absolutely crazy, nuts, going to cause all kinds of problems, going to crush our economy, just that part of it, going to transform our society, just that part of it. But there's another part of the law, and this is the new information here that we're just finding out about now. There's another part of the law buried in the text. The text is very long. It's just one big long paragraph buried in the text. I'm going to bring it up for you in a moment so you can see for yourself with your own eyes. That would institute the largest wealth transfer in history, or could be that. I think it would be, actually. It's a crazy provision in the law. Before I get to that, though, one of the big questions that's constantly come up about this law, and this new provision that we just found kind of answers the question finally, is how would the European Union, small companies in like America, for example, or China or Mexico or other countries to go along with this, right? In America, maybe they would have to because they don't want to go bankrupt or something. But what about in China? Is China's government really going to allow the European Union to impose this crazy rule on all these Chinese companies? What about Mexico? What about, Brazil? What about Indonesia? Are these countries really going to allow the European Union to do this? And what we thought was, at first, my theory was that there would just be selective enforcement because of the way that enforcement works in the law. It's being driven mostly by individual countries in the European Union. And I thought, well, they'll just selectively enforce the law. They're not going to actually try to impose this on everybody in China, because China's not going to go along with that. They're never going to go along with that, right? And so I thought that's what was going to happen. But what I realized was this provision in the law, when we found it, answers the question of how they're going to get all these countries all over the world to go along with this. It's crazy. So let's just pull it up. Let's just pull it up for you so that you can see it for yourself. All right. So this is the actual text of the law itself. Okay. The highlighted part here is the relevant part. Don't worry too much about this section up here. So just focus on the yellow text. It says here that also, by better sharing the value along the chain of activities, responsible purchasing or distribution practices contribute to fighting against child labor, which often arises in countries or territories with high poverty levels. Child labor, slavery, things like that are prohibited under the law. That's obviously a very good thing. A whole bunch of really bad things are also included. And then it says here, companies should also provide targeted and proportionate support for an SME. SME means a small and medium-sized enterprise. So they're talking about small and medium-sized companies. So a lot of these companies in China and in Mexico and places like that are not big, massive corporations. They are big companies, but they're not necessarily like an Apple level company or something like that. So a small business or a medium-sized business is defined elsewhere in the European Union Code. We're still talking about big companies. We're just not talking about Apple's multinational corporations, right? So it says companies should also provide targeted and proportionate support for an SME, which is a business partner of the company. So we're talking about the covered big companies that are under this EU law, like Apple, Meta, Microsoft, McDonald's, Ford, etc. Where necessary in light of the resources, knowledge, and constraints of the SME, including by providing or enabling access to capacity building, training, or upgrading management systems, and where compliance with the code of conduct or the corrective action plan would jeopardize the viability of the SME, providing targeted and proportionate financial support, such as direct financing, low-interest loans, guarantees of continued sourcing, or assistance in securing financing. Jeopardizing the viability of an SME should be interpreted as possibly causing a bankruptcy of the SME or putting the SME in a situation where bankruptcy is imminent. Okay, so what is this saying? What it's saying is, this is really, really important that you pay attention to this, okay? What this is saying is that if you are a large company like Ford or McDonald's or whomever, and you're going to some manufacturer in Mexico or a manufacturer in China or whatever, you buy plastic from them or you buy some sort of product or machinery or something from them that you use in your business, and you say to them, hey, you have to start complying with all of these different things. The EU says that you have to do this. I have to impose it on you. You need to agree to it in a contract. Sorry. There's all sorts of labor standards in there, unionization standards, climate change initiatives, other left-wing things. You got to comply with them, all these social credit scores, because we are forced to make you do this. And you, as the manufacturer in China, say, no, like, I'm not going to do that. I'm sorry, but this would kill my business if I did that. This would destroy my business. I'm not going to do this. I can't afford to pay my workers significantly more money. I can't afford to only use solar power for my factory. I can't afford to, use electric vehicles, change out all my fleet of vehicles to electric vehicles. I can't do these things you're asking me to do. What happens? Well, according to this part of the code that I'm showing you right now, companies need to provide targeted and proportionate support for these businesses that say they can't do this, where necessary in light of the resources, knowledge, and constraints of the SME, including by providing or enabling access to capacity building, training, or upgrading management systems. That's all about how the business is operating. And where compliance with the code of conduct or the corrective action plan would jeopardize the viability of the SME, providing targeted and proportionate financial support, such as direct financing, low interest loans, guarantees of continued sourcing, or assistance in securing financing. So, in other words, you as the large company have to pay for these small and medium-sized companies to make the transition. No matter where these companies are located around the world, you need to prioritize doing that first, not abandoning them, paying for the transition. We're talking about untold numbers of companies, thousands and thousands of companies all over the world, in China, in Mexico, Brazil, Indonesia, Bangladesh, all over the world, doing business with all these major, huge, gigantic companies that also operate in the European Union. And all of those companies those small businesses and medium-sized businesses all over the world, if they say, I can't do this thing you're telling me to do, then the large businesses, including many American businesses, are going to have to pay for the transition or finance it in some way or pay money to help them train their management to be more woke or whatever the thing is. Okay? We're talking about untold amount. I mean, seriously, if we're talking about all the supply chains all over the world and all of these countries involving all of these SMEs, trillions of dollars potentially being transferred from big Western nations. The companies specifically, but the nations will end up paying for it. The people in the nations will end up paying for it, being transferred from those countries to these developing nations. That's what we're talking about here. The largest wealth transfer in history. And it is coming our way. It is already the law. This is starting to get rolled out in 2027. Companies are going to have to start complying with it. The transformation of the Western world is happening. And if you think these large companies like Apple or Ford or McDonald's or whatever, whoever else, Burger King, I don't know if Burger King's in this, but Burger King or whoever else is covered by this law, if you think they're just going to eat the costs of all this, you are living in fantasy land. They're not going to eat the costs. What they're going to do is they're going to raise their prices. And so you're going to have all these massive companies that you interact with on a daily basis, all raising their prices at the same time in order to comply with these ESG rules, because they now have to start sending all their money to these SMEs overseas. This is absolutely disastrous. Absolutely disastrous. Huge, huge, huge crisis. And if we don't, if the United States government doesn't stand up against this, if they don't fight back against this, then it's going to happen. We don't have to sign up for anything. Our politicians don't have to agree to anything. This is already the law. It's already going to occur. So we need our politicians to actively fight back against it by going to the European Union and saying, no, you're going to rewrite the law. We're not going to comply with this. You're not going to impose these ESG, social credit scoring rules on American businesses. No, you want to do that to some other country, fine, but you're not doing it to us here. That's what we need to have happen. Unfortunately, that's not the government we have right now. And so something needs to change. Either Kamala Harris, if she becomes president, needs to take a different stance on this, or Donald Trump, if he becomes president, needs to actively fight it. But something needs to happen, because right now our government is doing nothing to stop this. And it's potentially the biggest wealth transfer in history. It could crush the U.S. economy. It could force inflation to go through the roof. Also, that we can pay for businesses all over the world to transition their operations and do all these things that many of them don't even want to do. But because the European Union says that we have to do it, the whole world has to do the song and dance. This incredibly costly, disastrous song and dance. This is madness, and it has to stop. All right. What can you do right now? What you can do is share this video. Get more people involved in understanding what's going on. Knowledge really is power. And the first step to fighting back against this is people need to know that it's going on so that there can be pressure put on politicians to make an impact. So if you could please share this video with your friends and family members, leave a comment, like the video, subscribe to the channel. All of this is going to help more people see this video. And the more people who see it, the better the chances are that something big is going to happen. I've got speaking engagements lined up to talk about this issue with huge numbers of lawmakers coming up in the next 3 or 4 months or so. I just did a lot of media with Glenn Beck and Allie Beth Stuckey and others as well over at Blaze Media talking about this issue. It's a huge topic. I'm going to be doing more media about this, getting more people aware of what's going on, but I need your help. I can't do this on my own. So please like the video, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment. At the very least, that's costs no money at all, just takes a tiny bit of your time, and it makes a huge impact in who gets to see these videos. All right. Thanks very much for watching the show. Again, my name is Justin Haskins. I wish I had better news. Maybe next time. Not this time. This time it's not looking good, but I really appreciate you watching the show. We're in the fight together, no matter how this all turns out. And I still have confidence. I have confidence that God is not done with the United States of America and that we're going to recover from this, but it's going to take all of us fighting. So until next time, I'm Justin Haskins. Thanks for watching the show. Stay free.